Step out slowly, ma'am. Because cars like this usually come with paperwork people like you forget to carry. Officer Travis Miller said it through the rain-speckled window with the kind of calm that made the insult feel rehearsed. Naomi Brooks sat behind the wheel of the black state sedan on the shoulder of Route 60 outside Richmond, both hands resting where he could see them, her breathing steady beneath the soft tick of the turn signal. Dawn had barely broken over the wet Virginia road, and the world around them was all gray light, pine trees, passing headlights, and the low hiss of tires cutting through shallow rainwater. Red and blue patrol lights slid across the dashboard, over the sealed folder on the passenger seat, across the simple navy coat folded beside it, then back onto Naomi's face. She was 36 years old, a black woman with tired eyes, a neat low bun, and the kind of stillness people mistook for fear until they realized it was discipline. She had left a policy meeting before sunrise, driven almost 40 miles through rain, and was supposed to be in Richmond by 8 o'clock for a closed legal briefing at the Capitol. The folder beside her carried the state seal, a confidential memo, and a draft report about traffic stops that began with vague suspicion and ended with citizens being forced to prove they belonged in places they had every right to be. Now, on the edge of a wet road, that report no longer felt theoretical. Travis Miller stood beside her door in a dark patrol jacket, water beading along the brim of his hat, his pale face lit unevenly by his own flashing lights. Behind him, a younger officer named Ryan Cole stood near the second patrol car, one hand resting on his notepad, his eyes moving from Naomi's license plate to the sedan's government tag with growing uncertainty. Naomi noticed him. She noticed everything. The angle of the body camera on Travis's chest, the fact that his hand had not reached for a citation pad, the way he had opened with judgment before giving a reason. She lowered the window 2 inches more, just enough for her voice to carry clearly. "Officer, what is the basis for the stop?" Travis smiled as if she had asked something amusing. "Suspicious driving pattern." Naomi looked through the windshield at the empty stretch of road ahead. She had been driving 4 miles under the speed limit, keeping to the right lane, signaling every turn. "Please describe the pattern." Rain tapped the roof in a soft, steady rhythm. Travis's smile faded by 1 degree. He was used to nervous answers, shaking hands, apologies offered before questions were asked. He was not used to a woman he had already placed beneath him, speaking as if the law belonged to her too. "Ma'am," he said, leaning slightly toward the window without touching the car. "Do not make this difficult." Naomi's eyes moved to the sealed folder on the passenger seat, then back to him. "Clarity is not difficulty," she said. "It is procedure." For the first time, Officer Ryan Cole stopped writing and looked up. Naomi Brooks had learned to recognize the shape of power before it spoke its full name. It was in the pause before a question, the tilt of a chin, the assumption hidden beneath a polite word. She had seen it in courtrooms, city halls, school board meetings, and once in a courthouse elevator where a man in an expensive suit asked if she was lost while she was holding a brief that would decide his client's future. That morning on Route 60, Power wore a rain-dark patrol jacket and stood beside her window pretending procedure had begun only after suspicion. Naomi kept her hands on the wheel because she knew the camera was watching, because Ryan Cole was watching, because every word she chose might matter later in a report, a transcript, or a hearing room where people tried to soften what had happened. She had left Richmond before dawn for a private meeting in Chesterfield County with community advocates, transportation officials, and 2 retired judges. The subject had been traffic enforcement reform, a phrase that sounded dry on paper but carried human weight in the room. Mothers had talked about sons being stopped after night shifts. Nurses had talked about being questioned in parking lots. A veteran had said he still kept his registration on the dashboard because reaching into a glove compartment made him nervous after what happened to his nephew. Naomi had written every story down in a narrow notebook with a blue cover, not because stories alone changed policy, but because policy without stories became cold enough to excuse almost anything. Now that notebook sat beneath the sealed folder on the passenger seat, its corners tucked under the state seal. Naomi wore no expensive suit that morning, only a navy coat over a cream blouse, black slacks, and small pearl earrings her mother had given her when she passed the bar exam. Her mother had been a school secretary for 32 years and believed in two things with equal devotion: good manners and written proof. Never let disrespect make you forget your purpose, she used to say, and never let someone rush you past the facts. Naomi heard that voice as Travis Miller looked past her into the car, his eyes lingering on the folder, the government tag, the polished interior, and finally her face again. "License and registration," he said. Naomi nodded once. "My license is in my wallet, inside my bag on the passenger floor. Registration is in the state vehicle packet in the console." "I am going to reach for them slowly." Travis gave a small shrug, as though granting permission were generosity. Ryan shifted behind him, rain running off the edge of his cap. Naomi retrieved the documents with deliberate care and handed them through the narrow opening. Travis glanced at the license first, then at the registration, then back at her. "Naomi Brooks," he read. "This your vehicle?" "It is assigned to me by the Commonwealth of Virginia." His eyebrow lifted. "Assigned for what?" Naomi's eyes remained steady. "Official business." Travis let the silence sit there, thick and insulting. "That is a broad answer." "So was suspicious driving pattern," Naomi replied. Ryan looked down quickly, but not before Naomi caught the flicker of recognition in his face. A truck passed in the far lane, sending mist across the shoulder. The patrol lights kept sliding over the sealed folder, like a warning waiting to be opened. Travis held her documents a little longer than necessary, and Naomi understood then that he was not searching for information. He was searching for a way to remain certain. Travis Miller walked back toward his patrol car with Naomi's license and state vehicle packet in his hand, moving slowly enough to make waiting feel like part of the punishment. Rainwater ran in thin lines down the back window of the sedan, blurring his reflection into a dark shape crossed by red and blue light. Naomi stayed still, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes forward, listening to the radio chatter from the patrol car mix with the hiss of traffic passing in the left lane. Ryan Cole stood a few yards behind Travis, young enough that his uniform still looked like something he was trying to earn rather than something he owned. He glanced toward Naomi's government tag again, then toward the computer screen inside the patrol car. Something about the stop did not sit right with him, but discomfort was not courage, not yet. Travis had been on the force for 15 years, and he had built his name on what supervisors called instinct. He called it reading people. In truth, it was often just deciding who belonged before the facts arrived. A black woman alone in a state sedan before sunrise, carrying sealed documents and answering questions without apology, did not fit the picture he wanted. That bothered him more than any traffic violation could have. Inside the patrol car, he ran the plate and watched the record appear clean, official, and inconvenient. Commonwealth Fleet Vehicle. No alert. No stolen report. No expired registration. Assigned status active. Ryan leaned slightly toward the screen. "Looks valid," he said quietly. Travis did not answer. He clicked through another page, then another, as if the system might reward persistence with suspicion. "Could still be misused," he muttered. Ryan looked at him. "Based on what?" Travis turned his pale eyes on the younger officer, and the question died before Ryan could shape another one. Outside, Naomi saw the exchange through the rain-streaked mirror. She could not hear the words, but she knew the posture. One man looking for a reason, another man recognizing the absence of one. Travis returned to her window with the documents held flat against his clipboard. "Step out of the vehicle," he said. Naomi's face remained composed, but a colder silence settled in the car. "For what lawful purpose?" Travis tilted his head. "Ma'am, I am conducting an investigation." "Into what?" she asked. A passing car slowed, then continued. The wet road carried its tire sound away in a long whisper. Travis looked at the sealed folder on the passenger seat. "That is what I am trying to determine." Naomi turned her head just enough to meet his eyes. "You stopped me first and searched for the reason afterward." Ryan's pen stopped moving. Travis's jaw tightened. You are making assumptions about police work. Naomi's voice stayed calm. No. I am asking you to identify yours. For a moment, the only sound was rain tapping metal. Travis looked at her as if the road itself had betrayed him by giving her no one else to fear. Then he stepped back from the window and gestured toward the shoulder. Out of the car, please. Naomi looked at the body camera on his chest, then at Ryan's notepad, then at the sealed folder catching the flash of patrol lights beside her. She unfastened her seatbelt slowly and reached for her coat. Officer Miller, she said, make sure your camera is recording. Travis smiled thinly. It is. Naomi opened the door and stepped into the rain. The rain met Naomi's face in fine, cold points, settling along her lashes and the shoulders of her navy coat as she stepped onto the gravel shoulder beside the sedan. She closed the door gently behind her, not with fear, not with anger, but with the deliberate care of someone who knew every movement could be turned into a sentence later. Route 60 stretched ahead in wet gray lines, bordered by dark pines and winter grass, while early commuters passed in slow blurs of headlights and spray. Travis Miller stood a few feet away with her documents still in his hand, his posture squared toward her as if the roadside belonged entirely to him. Ryan Cole stayed near the rear patrol car, watching, pen ready but unmoving. Naomi kept her hands relaxed at her sides. Please state for the record why I have been asked to exit the vehicle, she said. Travis gave a dry breath that was almost a laugh. You keep saying for the record like you are in charge here. Naomi looked at the small lens on his chest. I am saying it because your camera is. The words landed quietly, but Ryan's eyes flicked to Travis's body camera, then to his own. Travis noticed and did not like it. You have a sealed folder in a state vehicle, and you are refusing to explain your business. I provided my license, registration, and confirmation that the vehicle is assigned for official use, Naomi replied. You have not identified a traffic violation. Travis stepped slightly toward the front of the sedan and looked through the windshield at the folder on the passenger seat. What is in the folder? Naomi followed his gaze. The state seal on the envelope caught the pulse of red and blue light, bright for 1 second, then shadowed the next. Confidential legal material. Travis's smile returned, thin and unkind. That sounds convenient. Naomi felt the insult, but she did not feed it. She thought of the people in the morning meeting, of the nurse who had kept her voice steady while describing the humiliation of being questioned after a double shift, of the retired judge who had said the law failed first in small moments, when no one wanted to write them down. Naomi was standing inside one of those small moments now. Officer Miller, she said, I am asking again. Are you issuing a citation, verifying the assignment, or extending this stop without a specific basis? Ryan stopped pretending to write. Travis looked toward him once, a warning without words, then back at Naomi. You are awfully confident for someone standing on the shoulder. Naomi's coat darkened under the rain. A drop slid down her temple. She did not wipe it away. Confidence is not suspicion, she said, and questions are not resistance. For the first time, the younger officer spoke. Sir, the registration came back clean. Travis's head turned slowly. Ryan swallowed. But this time, he did not look down. It is an active state vehicle. No alerts. A truck passed, pushing a wave of mist across the shoulder. Naomi stood through it, still and upright, while Travis's certainty thinned in the wet air. He looked at her documents again, then at the folder, then at Naomi's calm face, searching for a way to make the stop feel justified after the facts had begun to leave him behind. Travis Miller did not answer Ryan right away. He stood in the rain with Naomi's documents pressed against his clipboard, looking from the clean registration record to the woman beside the sedan, as if the facts had become inconvenient guests on his own roadside. The older officer's face stayed controlled, but the control had begun to show its seams. Naomi could see it in the way his thumb tapped once against her license, then stopped. She could hear it in the silence that followed Ryan's quiet correction. A lawful stop was supposed to have a shape: reason, verification, resolution. This one had begun with judgment and was now trying to borrow legitimacy after the truth had already arrived. "Officer Cole," Travis said without taking his eyes off Naomi, "continue documenting the vehicle." Ryan hesitated. "Sir, for what purpose?" The question hung in the damp air like a light turning on in a room nobody wanted examined. Travis finally looked at him, and for a moment the roadside felt smaller, tighter, filled with the pressure of one man expecting obedience from another. "Because I told you to," he said. Ryan's pen lowered. Naomi watched the younger officer wrestle with himself, and she felt a strange sadness for him. It was one thing to face the person misusing authority. It was another to watch someone nearby decide whether conscience would cost too much. Travis turned back to Naomi. "You're going to wait here while we sort this out." "Sort what out?" Naomi asked. "The vehicle is valid. My license is valid. You have named no violation. Your attitude is not helping you." Naomi let the sentence pass through the rain before responding. "My attitude is not part of the traffic code." A sedan passing in the far lane slowed briefly, then continued, its tires sending a thin spray across the shoulder. The red and blue lights kept flashing over Naomi's coat, over the sealed folder inside the car, over the wet grass and pale gravel. Travis leaned closer, still keeping distance, lowering his voice as if he wanted the body camera to hear less than Naomi did. "People like you always think legal words make you untouchable." Ryan looked up sharply. Naomi did not move, but something in her eyes changed. The insult had finally stepped out from behind procedure and shown its face. She could have revealed everything then. She could have said the title, the office, the governor's name, the meeting, the report. She could have watched Travis's expression shift in real time. But that would have made respect depend on recognition, and Naomi had spent too much of her life fighting that exact lie. Instead, she spoke as calmly as before. "People like me are citizens. That should be enough." The words quieted the shoulder more than any raised voice could have. Ryan took one slow breath and looked toward his patrol car computer again. "Sir," he said carefully, "dispatch can verify the state assignment directly. I can call it in." Travis's jaw tightened. "I already ran the plate." "Then let us confirm the assigned driver." Naomi watched Travis's face. There it was. The moment pride realized procedure might not protect it. He looked at the sealed folder again, then at the government tag, then at Ryan, whose hand had moved to his radio. "Fine," Travis said. "Call it in." Ryan stepped back toward his patrol car, speaking into the radio in a low, professional voice. Naomi stood in the rain beside the sedan, water gathering at the cuffs of her navy coat, her pulse steady but heavy. Through the passenger window, the sealed folder waited under flashes of light, carrying a report about stops exactly like this one. Travis had not opened it, but somehow he had already walked himself into its pages. Ryan's radio crackled softly from the second patrol car, its clipped tones blending with the rain until every word sounded like it had to fight its way through water. Naomi Brooks stood beside the black sedan and watched her own reflection tremble in the passenger window, navy coat darkened at the shoulders, cream blouse damp at the collar, pearl earrings catching quick flashes of red and blue. Inside the car, the sealed folder rested on the seat like a quiet witness. She could see the raised state seal through the envelope, the edge of her blue notebook tucked beneath it, and the corner of a yellow tab marking the section on discretionary stops. The section title had sounded clinical when she typed it the night before. Now the words had a temperature. They had rain on them. They had a roadside, a badge, a younger officer learning what silence could cost, and an older officer trying to stretch suspicion over a clean record until it looked official. Travis Miller stood a few feet away, no longer speaking, but his silence still pressed against the air. Naomi let herself breathe slowly. In for 4 counts. Out for 4. Her mother's voice returned as clearly as if she were sitting in the passenger seat with a folded church program in her lap. "Never let disrespect make you forget your purpose." Naomi had carried that sentence through law school, through rooms where men interrupted her and later repeated her ideas, through hearings where grieving families asked if policy could ever feel human again. She had learned that anger could be honest, and still not be useful in the moment it arrived. So she stood in the rain and stayed useful. A minivan slowed as it passed, the driver glancing toward the patrol lights before speeding up again. Naomi wondered how many people had driven by scenes like this and told themselves there must have been a reason. There was comfort in believing authority always began with reason. It meant you never had to imagine yourself on the shoulder, hands visible, voice measured, waiting for someone else to decide whether your explanation sounded worthy. Ryan's voice carried from the radio. Dispatch. Confirm assigned operator for Commonwealth Fleet Sedan. Virginia government tag ending 742. Static answered. Travis shifted his weight. Naomi noticed the motion, small but telling. His confidence had begun to look less like certainty and more like a man holding a door shut while wind pushed from the other side. The rain softened to a mist. Drops gathered on the sedan mirror and fell, one by one, onto the gravel below. Naomi looked through the window at the folder again and thought of the people named only by initials in the draft report. Citizens reduced to case numbers because full names carried too much pain. She had promised them the final version would not be polite enough to hide the truth. Ryan's radio clicked again, then went quiet. He leaned closer to hear. Travis looked at him sharply. Naomi did not move. The whole shoulder seemed to hold its breath as dispatch began to answer. Dispatch did not speak loudly, but the words carried through the mist as if the whole roadside had leaned closer to hear them. Confirmed. Commonwealth Fleet Sedan assigned to Naomi Brooks, Senior Legal Advisor to the Governor's Office. Active, travel authorization, on file. Do not delay without documented cause. Ryan Cole went still with the radio in his hand. Travis Miller's face changed in pieces. First the eyes, then the jaw, then the careful line of his mouth that had spent the morning pretending certainty was the same as truth. Naomi saw it all without moving. She had watched men discover her title before. Sometimes they smiled too quickly. Sometimes they apologized to the office instead of the person. Sometimes they looked embarrassed, not because they had been wrong, but because they had been wrong in front of someone who could prove it. Ryan lowered the radio slowly and looked toward Naomi, then toward the sealed folder visible through the passenger window. Officer Miller, he said, his voice quiet but clear. Dispatch confirms her assignment. Travis swallowed, rain collecting along the edge of his hat before falling onto his clipboard. I heard. The radio clicked again before anyone could speak. A second voice came through, older and sharper, belonging to a supervisor who had clearly been patched into the call. Miller, this is Lieutenant Harris. Return the driver's documents. State office just contacted the district. Explain the basis for the stop immediately. The word immediately seemed to strike harder than the rain. Travis looked at Naomi then, and the roadside was no longer his stage. The patrol lights still flashed, the cars still passed, the wet pine trees still stood silent beyond the shoulder, but the authority he had wrapped around himself had loosened in the air. Naomi's title had arrived, not with a motorcade or a speech, but through a radio transmission he could not dismiss. Ryan stepped forward, holding out Naomi's license and vehicle packet. Travis did not stop him. Naomi accepted them with a small nod. Thank you, Officer Cole. Ryan's face tightened, not with pride, but with the discomfort of someone who had finally chosen the smaller right thing after too much hesitation. Travis cleared his throat. Miss Brooks, there appears to have been a misunderstanding. Naomi placed the documents against her coat to shield them from the rain. No, she said softly. There was an assumption. The misunderstanding came after you tried to justify it. Ryan looked down at his notepad. The lieutenant's voice came through again, asking for the stated violation, the dash cam marker, the body camera number, and the time of initial contact. Each request sounded like a nail fastening the morning into record. Travis answered in fragments. Suspicious driving pattern. No citation issued. Verification pending. His words grew smaller as he heard himself. Naomi listened without interrupting. She was not interested in humiliating him. She was interested in accuracy. Through the passenger window, the yellow tab in her sealed report caught another flash of blue light. discretionary stops, documentation gaps, citizen dignity. The pages had not needed an example, but Travis had given them one anyway. At last, he turned fully toward her, rain sliding down his pale cheek. "I did not know who you were." Naomi held his gaze, steady as the road beneath them. "That should not have mattered." The mist thinned. For one brief second, Route 60 grew quiet enough that even Travis seemed to hear the weight of what he had done. Lieutenant Harris arrived less than 10 minutes later in an unmarked county vehicle, tires whispering over the wet shoulder before coming to a careful stop behind the patrol cars. He stepped out with a raincoat over his uniform and a tablet tucked beneath one arm, his face carrying the tired seriousness of a man who already knew the report would not be simple. Travis Miller stood straighter when he saw him, but the motion came too late to look like confidence. Ryan Cole remained near the second patrol car, his notebook open, his radio quiet now, his expression fixed on the ground as if he were reading the morning from the gravel. Naomi Brooks stood beside the sedan, still damp from the mist, her documents secured inside her coat pocket, her eyes calm but unsoftened. Harris looked first at Naomi, then at Travis, then at the black state sedan with the sealed folder visible through the passenger window. "Miss Brooks," he said, "I apologize for the delay. I need to confirm that you are free to continue unless Officer Miller can state a lawful reason to extend this stop." Naomi nodded. "I understand." Harris turned to Travis. "State the violation." The rain had nearly stopped, leaving drops clinging to the brim of Travis's hat. He looked down at his clipboard. "Suspicious driving pattern." Harris waited. "Specific behavior." Travis's mouth tightened. "Slow speed. Early hour. State vehicle." Naomi did not speak, but Ryan looked up. Harris's face did not change, and somehow that made the silence heavier. "Driving 4 miles under the speed limit in rain is not a violation," he said. "Early hour is not a violation. A valid state vehicle is not a violation." Travis shifted his weight. The older officer's certainty had nowhere left to stand. Harris tapped his tablet. "Body camera, dash camera, dispatch log, plate return, and all notes will be preserved. Officer Cole, you will submit a separate statement by noon." Ryan nodded. "Yes, sir." Travis looked toward Naomi, and for the first time his voice lost its polished edge. "Miss Brooks, I should have handled the verification faster." Naomi met his eyes. "That is not all you should have handled differently." He swallowed. "I should not have made assumptions." The words came slowly, as if each one had to pass through pride before reaching the air. Naomi let them sit there. She had no interest in making him smaller. The stop had already shown enough. "Officer Miller," she said, "you did not disrespect my position. You disrespected a citizen before you knew she had one." Harris lowered his gaze for half a second, not from discomfort, but from recognition. Ryan wrote the sentence down without being told. Travis stood silent beneath the thinning rain, and the silence finally belonged to the truth instead of his authority. Naomi stepped to the passenger side, opened the door, and lifted the sealed folder from the seat. The state seal caught the gray morning light. "This report was supposed to discuss patterns," she said. "Now it will include one." Travis looked at the folder as if it had been watching him the entire time. Naomi placed it carefully back on the seat, closed the door, and walked around to the driver's side. Before she got in, Harris spoke again. "Miss Brooks, the governor's office has been notified. You will not be delayed further." Naomi paused with her hand on the door handle. No one should need the governor's office to make a valid stop end properly. No one answered, because no one could improve on the truth. She got into the sedan, started the engine, and waited until Ryan moved the second patrol car aside. Travis remained on the shoulder, his clipboard lowered, his face pale in the softening light. The road ahead opened toward Richmond, wet, quiet, and waiting. Naomi drove back onto Route 60 without speeding, without gripping the wheel too tightly, without looking in the rearview mirror longer than the road required. The patrol lights faded behind her in the gray morning until they became only faint flashes through the mist, then nothing at all. Ahead, Richmond waited beyond wet pavement, pine trees, and a strip of pale sunlight beginning to open above the horizon. The sedan smelled faintly of rain, leather, and paper. On the passenger seat, the sealed folder rested where it had been all morning, but it no longer felt like a document traveling to a meeting. It felt like something that had gathered a heartbeat. Naomi kept one hand steady on the wheel and placed the other briefly over the folder, not opening it yet, just feeling the raised state seal beneath her palm. She thought of Officer Cole standing in the rain with his notebook open, of Lieutenant Harris asking for facts one by one until the stop had nowhere left to hide, and of Travis Miller on the shoulder, holding a clipboard that suddenly looked too small for the authority he had tried to place inside it. She did not smile. This was not victory in the bright, simple way people like to imagine justice. It was quieter than that. It was the sound of a body camera being preserved, a dispatch log being marked, a young officer writing down what he saw, and one mistaken certainty being forced into official language. Her phone buzzed once in the cup holder. A message from the governor's chief of staff appeared on the screen, asking if she was safe and whether the briefing needed to be delayed. Naomi glanced at it at the next red light and replied with one sentence, "I am safe, and I am coming in." The light turned green. She continued toward the Capitol as the rain lifted fully, leaving the city washed in silver and brick red, office windows catching the first clean light of the day. By the time she entered the parking garage beneath the government building, her coat had dried at the edges but still held the chill of the roadside. In the elevator, alone beneath soft fluorescent light, Naomi finally opened the folder. The report waited in clean pages, careful paragraphs, measured recommendations. She took out her blue notebook and turned to a blank page. For a moment, she saw her mother's handwriting in memory, neat on grocery lists, birthday cards, and every envelope that had ever carried proof of something paid, earned, or promised. Never let someone rush you past the facts. Naomi uncapped her pen and wrote slowly. Policy fails when dignity depends on recognition. She looked at the sentence until the elevator doors opened. Upstairs, a conference room had already filled with lawyers, officials, and advisors who would discuss procedure, training, oversight, and public trust. Naomi stepped inside, placed the sealed folder at the head of the table, and sat down without explaining the rain still darkening her sleeves. Outside, the city moved on. Cars crossing bridges, buses stopping at curbs, people beginning ordinary days without knowing how close ordinary could come to being questioned. Back on Route 60, Officer Travis Miller remained beside his patrol car while Lieutenant Harris reviewed the footage with him in silence. Ryan Cole stood nearby, eyes lowered, not ashamed of speaking up but changed by how long it had taken. The road between them and Richmond gleamed under the clearing sky. And somewhere along that road, Naomi Brooks carried the morning forward, not as a wound, not as revenge, but as evidence that truth, once written clearly, could still make power answer.